أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم لا تؤاخذني بما يقولون واغفر لي ما لا يعلمون واجعلني خيرا مما يظنون رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So we last spoke about 3 weeks ago. We spoke about Yusuf alayhi salam entering prison. So we reached that part of the story. Okay. Now I know there's a few new faces, so I'm gonna try to do a little to catch up everyone else. We've reached the point where Yusuf alayhi salam has entered prison, and we explained the reasons why. And there are some events that had happened while he's in prison. He entered prison with two youth, in fact, and these two youth got to know Yusuf alayhi salam, and through knowing him, they found out that he was actually someone who can interpret dreams, right? Finding that out, these two young men had dreams that were concerning to them. And they had dreams where they wanted somebody to interpret those dreams. Yusuf alayhi salam being that person, they had asked him about the dream. One of the person had a dream of him. In his dream, he is squeezing wine, right? He's squeezing grapes to make wine. The other person had a dream of a piece of bread on his head, and he sees a crow or a bird picking from it or eating from the bread, right? So they went and asked Yusuf alayhi salam, what is the meaning of these dreams, right? Yusuf alayhi salam, in this part of the story, is one of the first portions of the story where we actually hear from Yusuf alayhi salam himself, right? Prior to this, he never really had a lengthy conversation. We don't really learn from who he is, or we don't learn about him as much as this point here, right? So with that said, I really want to focus on trying to get to know Yusuf alayhi salam through his responses and through his conversations, because of what he chooses to say will tell you a lot from what type of person he really was. And I'll try my best to highlight certain words that Yusuf alayhi salam says to tell us that, what type of person Yusuf alayhi salam really was. So I have a student of mine here who mashallah, who is, one of his goals is to actually memorize the whole Quran, him and his brother, mashallah, and his cousin and my son here. They all actually go to the same school. So, with that said, he will be reading for us the following verses, starting from verse 38, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم واتبعت ملة آبائي إبراهيم وإسحاق ويعقوب ما كان لنا أن نشرك بالله من شيء ذلك من فضل الله علينا وعلى الناس ولكن أكثر الناس لا يشكرون يا صاحبي السجن أأرباب متفرقون خير أم الله الواحد القهار ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان إن الحكم إلا لله أمر ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون يا صاحبي السجن أما أحدكما فيسقي ربه خمرا وأما الآخر فيصلب فتأكل الطير من رأسه قضي الأمر الذي فيه تستفتيان وقال للذي ظن أنه ناج منهم اذكرني عند ربك فأنساه الشيطان ذكر ربه فلبث في السجن بضع سنين
حسبك ما شاء الله تبارك الله. So we spoke a little bit on ayah number 38. In ayah number 38, Yusuf alayhi salam explains. He mentions about the religion that he is on to these two young men, right? And he says, وَاتَّبَعْتُ مِلَّةَ آبَاءِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ. I follow the religion of my forefathers, being Ibrahim, Ishaq, wa Yaqub. مَا كَانَ لَنَا أَن نُشْرِكَ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. We do not associate any other lordship or any other gods, any other gods with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in worship, right? ذَلِكَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْنَا. This is the grace to us. This is Allah's blessing to humanity. But most people are not grateful, are not yashkurun. They're not grateful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, what does this mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a religion. The religion in which we know as Muslims that fulfills every single need of ours. It fulfills everything that we need in our life, and that in itself is a blessing. If we just have religion, we know that that's enough. In fact, if we know that that's enough, wallahi, is enough for even our stomachs to be filled. It's enough to be our hearts to be filled and our needs to be filled. We won't need anything else. Rather, that Yusuf alayhi salam is saying here, وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ. Indeed, that there are a lot of people who are not thankful for that, for this deen, for this religion. Now we spoke about the importance of teaching your children at a young age. The importance of deen starts at a young age, and it starts in the household. The next ayah number 39. Ya sahibi sijni a'arbabun mutafarriquna khayrun amillahi al-wahid al-qahhar. Now, one of my goals for tonight, at least for the first half of this lecture, is to try to explain one of the names of Allah that Yusuf alayhi salam uses in this sentence. And the goal is for us to understand who Allah really is, so that we can get closer to Him. Now, Is it possible? And I mentioned this in one of my first lectures here when I started this program. One of my questions to everyone here is that could we truly love somebody? Could we truly know somebody? Could we truly like a person without knowing them? Is that possible? It is possible, but could it be the fact that we just love him because we hear the good things about him? Now, if we really truly know who that person is, what they do, the things they like, how they act, could we say that we would either like them more or like them less? Right? In the case of for example, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, is it the case that when we hear the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and we hear the things that he does, don't we tend to love him more than how we used to prior to listening to that lecture or that story? Yes. Right? Now, it is the same with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you ask any Muslim child if they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what would they say? Yes, obviously. Right? But not until they learn who Allah truly is. By knowing his names, by knowing his attributes, by knowing who he is truly, they will have a higher level of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Now with that understood, there is one name in this ayah. Did you guys hear it when it was read? يا صاحبي السجن أأرباب متفرقون خير أم الله الواحد القهار. The name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Wahidul Qahhar. Alright? Now before we get into that, like I mentioned, I'm going to try my best to explain what Wahidul Qahhar really means. Right? It starts with Ya Sahib al-Sijn, Yusuf alayhi salam. Now remember I said, let's try to focus on the responses of Yusuf alayhi salam, because it will tell us how he truly was. We can understand what type of person he was by analyzing his sentences and what he used to say, right? He says, Ya Sahib al-Sijn. He's calling to those two people. He says, Ya Sahib al-Sijn. He uses the word sahib or suhba, or you guys hear the word sahaba, right? The companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Same thing here, sahib. This kind of mentions that he's saying sahib because they were able to get to know each other for a lengthy time, right? It's not just like they enter prison and they talk a little bit and then they became friends immediately, right? And it even happens between us and our friends, right? The more time we spend with somebody, the closer we'll become with that person, right? That's just how friendship forms, right? You spend more time with a person, you become closer to them. In this case, it seems to be the case that Yusuf alayhi salam and these two people, they actually spent a lot of time together, right? Ya sahibi as-sijn, oh my companion in prison. This is what he's calling him. And when you call somebody my friend or my companion, it shows a sense of like closeness. Like, oh my dear friend, I care a lot about you, right? I hear you in what you're saying to me, right? Rather than just say, hey Bob, or hey Mohammed, all right, Shura Habib, how's it going, right? Well, if I called you my friend, I'm listening to you. It's different, isn't it? Right? So in this case, he's saying, oh companion of mine, right? And he's asking him, أَأَرْبَابٌ مُتَفَرِّقُونَ خَيْرٌ أَمِ اللَّهِ. Are multiple lordships or gods better? Are He's asking which is better, right? Many different lords or one God, Allah? This is the question. Because he's asking these people, are many lords better? Many lords, meaning multiple lords, more than one, better than one God, right? In this case, he uses the name Amillahil Wahidul Qahhar, or one God, the most supreme, right? Now he says Arbabun mutafarriquna. Arbab comes from the word Rabb, meaning God, right, or Lord. He's referring to, he could be referring to two things, right? He can be referring to many gods, right? Many gods, or many Allahs, if you will, like many Allahs, or many masters. So remember here, Yusuf a.s. was a slave, right? He was a slave to who? To his master, his king, right? So that king can also be his Rabb. Does that make sense? Right? So any type of Rabb could be either a god or a master. Because if I was a slave, for example, right, and Abdurrahman, he was my master, I'll call him Rabbi, my Lord, right? Rabbi, what can I do for you? Does that make sense? So there could be two meanings here. He's referring to either of the two, either lords that people worship, many lords that people worship, like idols, for example, or he could be referring to the masters that they serve, right? And then he continues to say Allah Wahidul Qahhar. Now, to understand what Qahhar means, right? In English translation, it means the most powerful or the most supreme. Right? Supreme is taken from the word like super, right? Like a superpower, like somebody who can't ever take over him. Right? He's the most powerful. Does that make sense? Now in Surah As-Sa'ad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this name. Now for us to understand what this name really means, I want you guys to try to think about the two men and Yusuf alayhi salam and where they are. Now I want you to picture them. Yusuf alayhi salam, he went to prison without making any mistakes. He didn't commit any crimes, and he's stuck in prison. The two men, they're there, why? Because they were caught, because one of them was trying to plot or plan against the king. So they caught these two men and they put them in prison, pending or waiting for punishment. They're gonna investigate to find out who is the one that planned against the king. One of them planned against the king. They're trying to figure out who it was, right? So they're in a place where they're fearful. They're scared, right? They're scared of what's gonna happen in the future, and they're scared of what their Rabb, their Lord or their master, is gonna do to them. Does that make sense? Okay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions His name in Surah As-Sa'ad, ayah number 65. He says, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا مُنذِرٌ وَمَا مِنْ إِلَهٍ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَاحِدُ الْقَهَّارُ. The Prophet Muhammad says, he's commanded to say, he says, I'm only a warner. I'm only here to warn you people, right? And I'm only here to warn you that there is no God, there is no deity other than Allah, except for Allah, Wahidul Qahhar, the most supreme. He's talking to who here? He's talking to people who are worshiping idols. And not just one idol, multiple idols. So he's saying that out of all of the lords that you are worshiping, there is one that is supreme amongst all that you're worshiping right now. There's one that is more powerful than everything that you're worshiping right now. Right? Wahid al-Qahhar. Now in Surah Al-An'am, it is mentioned again. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَهُوَ الْقَاهِرُ فَوْقَ عِبَادِهِ هُوَ الْحَكِيمُ الْخَبِيرُ. Now there's more than one of his names that is mentioned here, but it ties in together with Qahhar or Qahiru, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Huwa al-Qahir. He is overseeing, overpowering over his servants. What does that mean? Allah's wisdom and Allah's absolute knowledge over a person's situation, over his slave. Allah is mentioning here, He is in control over his servant. Everything that happens to his servant, He's in control over it. What else does that mean? We don't have to worry. Whatever happens to us, even though someone is like, for example, we're put in prison, right? We're being handcuffed and we're being brought to prison, and we don't know how long we're gonna stay there for. Who's in control of us right now? The police officer. No matter how much we plead to him, we're like, "Sir, I didn't do it. You know, go ask everyone else," and he's not listening to you, right? Isn't he in control of where you're going? Yes. However, Allah is saying to us here, whatever is going to happen to you in this dunya, no matter what it is, huwa al-qahiru fawqa ibadi. He is the supreme. He overlooks every single situation that you are in over his servant. If you are Allah's servant and you are a Muslim and you believe in Allah, Allah is saying to you, don't worry. I know what's going on. I have complete knowledge of what's going to happen. And I know what's going to happen in the future. So just be patient. And Allah says, Huwa al-Hakimul Khabir. He says, He is all knowing. Remember, all wise and all aware. He is aware of everything that's happening right now. We heard this previously in the Surah Yusuf, right? He is Hakimul Khabir. Right? This is Allah. Allahul Wahidul Qahhar. Now, the word Wahid in front of Qahhar, it really fits the definition here. Because we know that there are other people who are in control. There are presidents, there are rulers, right? We take, for example, Abraha, for example. He was one of the most powerful rulers during the time prior to Islam, right? He was so powerful that he was able to gather an army of elephants. On top of that, he had an army of his own. And what was his goal? His goal was to destroy the Kaaba. His goal was to destroy the Kaaba. A powerful ruler, a powerful Rabb, right? So in this case, he was one of many rulers, and yet his plan didn't happen. Allah stopped it. Wahidul Qahhar, the one supreme over all other lords, all other Rabbs. So when we say arbabun mutafarriquna khayrun, are many lords that we mentioned better than Wahidul Qahhar? Are these many lords better than the one supreme Lord? Right? Does that make sense? So it also fits with Yusuf alayhi salam using this name, this specific name in this context. Remember who he was talking to and where they were. Yusuf alayhi salam is talking to two people who do not know where they're going, who don't know what is going to happen to them. Correct? He doesn't know. And they don't know themselves. Yusuf alayhi salam, by hearing their dream, Immediately he translated the dream and he knew what was going to happen. One of them was going to be put on a cross, right? He was going to be punished by being put on a cross, and he's going to die on that cross, right? The other one is going to go back to serve and work for his king. Now, Yusuf alayhi salam is giving da'wah to these people, and he's saying, are your Lord, the multiple lords that you serve, better than the number one supreme Lord? He wants to leave them with an idea, so that when they leave, wherever they're going, they will remember the one supreme Lord. Even the person that will die, he knows that whatever they do to me, even though they kill me, Allah is my Lord. I don't care what they do, because Allah is going to be my protector. And Allah is going to take care of me after my death, right? For the other person, he's going to go back to working. Like just for us, for example, after we leave the masjid, we're going to go back to our daily lives. We're going to go back to our family. We're going to go back to work. Eventually we might even forget Allah, right? But remember that Allah, no matter what situation you're in, no matter who you face, even if you face the president, for example, know that there is someone above him that is more powerful than him. Does that make sense? So both of their cases, the one that will die, and he knows he's going to die, or he doesn't know, but Yusuf alayhi salam is telling him that, your time's up. That they found out who it was, and that person is, he didn't say you. Like, we'll get to the other part later, where Yusuf alayhi salam is so polite. He's so polite, he doesn't say you. He doesn't say you're gonna die, or you're gonna get punished, right? He's so polite, he doesn't use the word you. But he's telling them here, he's saying that he wants to leave them with an idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most supreme. And it also reminds us, the person that is reading it, in 2023, we're reading the story, and it applies to our life right now. We don't know when we're going to die, right? But we know the controller of that death. Our death is controlled by Wahid al-Qahhar. And if we ever go to, for example, to our boss, and we have a boss who is just a terrible boss, for example, right? He uses you for things that you're not hired for, right? But we know we're patient with it, and we know that there's someone more supreme than that person. Make sense? Okay. Now I left out one person. Yusuf alayhi salam. He's also reminding himself, Wahidul Qahhar. We know that he is put in prison for no apparent reason. He didn't do a crime. He didn't do anything wrong. But the Aziza, the wife of the minister, took him and put him in prison for no reason. But he is reminding himself, Wahidul Qahhar. Allah knows my situation. He's giving da'wah. He's giving da'wah to these people, but he's reminding himself, he's also in a predicament. Yusuf alayhi salam, he's in a place where he has no control. He can't just leave prison. He can't talk to people to try to convince them that, I'm not in prison I'm not supposed to be in prison. He doesn't have status to do that. People are overpowering Yusuf alayhi salam, but he's reminding himself that Allah, the most supreme, He is the one that's looking over me. And He is stronger than every single person, even the king of Egypt. Right? So in Surah Al-A'raf, we are reminded, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us belongs to Allah, the best of names. And indeed, in this program that I'm teaching, we've only covered 2 names of Allah. Actually 3, sorry. Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, and Wahidul Qahhar. Just knowing these 3 names, wallahi, it changes our perception of Allah. It changes our understanding of who Allah really is. And it changes our perception in our daily lives. We feel so much closer to Allah. Allah is telling us, Allah belongs to Allah, the best of names. So when you make dua to Allah, use those names. Ar-Rahman, please take care of me. We say, Ar-Razaq, please please provide for me. We're using His names that belongs to Him, and it means something to our dua. It brings our dua meaning, so that we are closer to Allah. It gives us khushu when we make a dua, right? So ayah number 40. Yusuf alayhi says, ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم. He's telling them, he says, you are worshipping idols that are just names that you guys gave those idols, right? Allat wal Uzza, like the idols that were giving names. These names were given to these idols by the people who worship them. The idols didn't come alive and then it gave themselves their own name, right? The names were given to them by the people who worships them. So Yusuf alayhi salam saying here, the idols that you worship are mere names that you and your fathers and your forefathers gave them. You guys named these idols, right? And he says, Ma anzalallahu biha min sultan. Allah never really authorized this. He never told us to do this, right? Inil hukmu illa lillah. Allah is the one that decides. Allah is the one that gives the hukum, right? Amara an la ta'buduna illa iyyah. And Allah commands us to only worship Allah alone. Min dunihi illa iyyah. Without any partnership. ذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمِ. This is the religion that is straightforward, right? This is the religion that we should follow. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. However, majority of the people, they don't know it. They don't know about this religion. They follow religion that you guys made up, right? Now he says again, Yusuf alayhi salam continues, he says, Ya sahibi as-sijn. Remember, you guys recognize this from 2 ayahs ago. He says, Ya sahibi as-sijn. He's repeating, Ya sahib, my companions. Now it's enough to just say it once, like, oh my friend, come with me, let's go hang out, let's do this, let's do that, right? But if I say, oh my friend, are you busy? My dear friend, I want to bring you out somewhere. It's like an emphasis that he's expressing and he's showing to these 2 people. This is a form of da'wah. Being kind and using something that brings that person closer to you. Because even the Prophet Muhammad says, Allah tells him, if you were to be ghalid al-qalb, like if you were to be harsh upon the people who are accepting Islam, they wouldn't follow you, right? If we were harsh to the kuffar and we're trying to give them da'wah, we're just pushing them away, right? So in this case, Yusuf alayhi salam is teaching us how to give da'wah in the correct manner, in a manner that is accepting to most people, right? He says, Ya sahibi as-sijn, oh my companion in prison, right? Because I'm with you. I'm here with you. I'm in prison also. I'm just like you. I'm not better than you. I'm in the same level as you. And he says, أَمَّا أَحَدُكُمَا فَيَسْقِي رَبَّهُ خَمْرًا. He says, now remember I mentioned Yusuf alayhi salam didn't say you, right? He says, أَمَّا أَحَدُكُمَا. He says, as for one of you. He didn't say specifically which one. Obviously he's talking to them. He could have easily said, well, for you will go back to working for your king. You're going to go and make wine for your king. Right? And he says the other one, he says, وَأَمَّا الْآخَرِ. As for the other guy, or for the other person, فَيُصْلَبُ فَتَأْكُلُ الطَّيْرُ مِنْ رَأْسِهِ. He says, the other person will be crucified. Right? Meaning that you're going to die. And what will come to you is a bird. It will come and eat from your flesh, from your head. Right? Because you're going to die. So when you die, you know how the vultures and the birds and stuff like that, they come and eat from your body. This is what he's saying. Right? Referring back to the dream. When a bird is eating from the bread from his head, right? Now, I really want to focus on the two things that he said. He says, Amma ahadukuma. He says, as for one of you guys, he's being very polite in his speech here, because one of them has a future that is not good. If you hear that you're going to die, you're gonna be like, oh man, like, what's gonna happen? Like, I'm stressed, right? It makes me really sad. So when a person is telling me this, right? You know how you go to court, for example, right? And then when you hear the hearing, the final verdict from the judge, everyone is silent. The courtroom, you can hear a pin drop in the courtroom, because everyone is worried about what the judge is going to say. Either he's going to be a free man, right? He's not going to go to jail, or he's going to go to jail for a long period of time. So in the courtroom, everyone is quiet because they want to hear the what's going to happen, right? If the judge were to say, you, Abdurrahman, you have you're going to go to jail for the rest of your life. At that moment, the person's heart will drop. Right? They're thinking like, I'm never going to see my children anymore. I'm never going to see my family anymore. I'm never going to go back to sleep on a comfortable bed anymore. I'm never going to see the masjid anymore. Right? Or I'm never going to eat a hamburger, a really nice hamburger again. Does that make sense? Because why? Because once they hear that they have a future with how do you say it? They have a future that is pretty much like ending. Their life is completely ending. That's something that is very, very hard for somebody to hear. Right? So Yusuf alayhi salam is trying to be very, very careful to deliver this message to that person. He doesn't even say, for you, you're sorry, but you're gonna die. He doesn't say that. He says, listen, you guys are my companions in prison. For one of you guys, right? He's very careful. He's for one of you guys are gonna go back to you are gonna go back to work for your king. As for the other person, if unfortunately, right, you're going to be put on a cross, and then birds are going to come eat from your head. Right? This is Yusuf alayhi salam. This is how he was. Imagine if you were to meet Yusuf alayhi salam. How polite, how much of his etiquettes and his manners will show when he's speaking to you. I could just imagine meeting Yusuf alayhi salam in Jannah. The only information that I got from Yusuf are his words here. I can't imagine what type of person he is. How polite, when he speaks to somebody, how polite he is to a person. So imagine when you meet him. And may Allah allow every single one of us to meet Yusuf alayhi salam and all of the prophets. That is something that I dearly would want to do in Jannah, inshallah. Right? And then he says, قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ الَّذِي فِيهِ تَسْتَفْتِيَانِ. He says, this matter that we're talking about has already been decided amongst the king and his his courtroom. Meaning that Yusuf alayhi salam, he knows what's going to happen in the future. Based off of what? Based off of the dreams. Did he go and hear the courtroom and hear about what they discussed about these two people? No, he's in prison. How would he know that they've already decided? The king and his ministers and stuff like that, they've already decided who's the one that's going to be punished. But Yusuf alayhi salam knew because he heard the dream. He didn't know because of the courtroom. Right? Now, the understanding of events. Remember we said ta'wilul ahadith. The explanation of, remember we mentioned I think 3 things, right? Allah taught Yusuf alayhi salam the understanding of dreams. The understanding of ahadith can also mean speech. Right? Different types of speeches. And we explained that before. Ahadith can also mean events. What happened in events. Like during like for example, like there's been chaos outside the masjid, how we explained before, right? And somebody came and said there's been an accident. A person who is like a good, those investigators, who the police investigators who comes out and they take notes and they look at stuff and they look at blood splatter and they look at like little small things around that area that doesn't fit. They can understand what happened even though they don't know the story. Right? This is what we're talking about. Yusuf alayhi salam can analyze things and understand events even after it happened already. Allah is the one who taught him this. Ta'wilul ahadith. And in this case, he understood the dream and he understood what's going to happen to them. Right? Ayah number 42. وَقَالَ لِلَّذِينَ ظَنَّ أَنَّهُ نَاجٍ مِنْهُمَا اذْكُرْنِي عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ فَأَنْسَاهُ الشَّيْطَانَ ذِكْرَ رَبِّهِ فَلَبِثَ فِي السِّجْنِ بِضْعَ سِنِينَ. Now after all that happened, one of the men was taken, and his future was to be put on a cross. As for the other person, Yusuf alayhi salam told him that he's going to go back and work for his Rabb, his Lord, right? Before he left, some of the mufassirin, they mentioned that Yusuf alayhi salam asked that person, the person that was going, remember the wine bearer, the one who was going to squeeze wine and make wine for his king and serve his king, he told him, Yusuf alayhi salam said, can you go to your king and mention my name to the king? Meaning tell him to look into my situation. Because he's not supposed to be in prison. So if the king goes and reviews what really happened to Yusuf, maybe the king will be like, oh, what is this guy doing here? He's not supposed to be in jail. Maybe I can take him out. Right? Yusuf alayhi salam, this is what he was hoping for. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to say, فَأَنْسَاهُ الشَّيْطَانَ ذِكْرَ رَبِّهِ. There are two opinions in this case. Allah is saying here, but Shaitan made him forget to mention the matter to his king. Right? Shaitan dhikr rabbi. Shaitan came to him and made him forget to mention him to his king. Now, there's two opinions here, and I don't want to get too deep into it because there's a lot of explanations between these two. But I'll leave it up to you guys to try to understand, inshallah. So the first saying, or the first opinion, is that Shaitan came to the wine bearer, the person who's going to serve the king, came to him and made him forget to mention Yusuf to his king. Right? Shaitan came and made him forget. The other opinion is that Shaitan made Yusuf forget. Oh, sorry. Shaitan, how to say this? Basically, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is punishing Yusuf alayhi salam for asking help from someone other than Allah. Right? Now, in my humble opinion, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, Allahu a'lam, but I am more sympathetic to the first opinion, where Shaitan came and made the wine bearer forget to mention Yusuf alayhi salam to his king. So the ayah continues to say, فَلَبِثَ فِي السِّجْنِ بِضْعِ سِنِينَ. Yusuf alayhi salam stayed in prison for several more years because he forgot. Right? The person that went back to his master, he forgot to mention Yusuf, and Yusuf stayed in prison for a longer time. Does that make sense? Okay, we can continue on for ayah number 43. Ayah number 43.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وقال الملك إني أرى سبع بقرات سمان يأكلهن سبع عجاف وسبع سنبلات خضر وأخرى يابسات يا أيها الملأ أفتوني في رؤياي إن كنتم للرؤيا تعبرون قالوا أضغاث أحلام وما نحن بتأويل الأحلام بعالمين وقال الذي نجا منهما وادكر بعد أمة أنا أنبئكم بتأويله فأرسلون يوسف أيها الصديق أفتنا في سبع بقرات سمان يأكلهن سبع عجاف وسبع سنبلات خضر وأخرى يابسات لعلي أرجع إلى الناس لعلهم يعلمون.
Okay, I think I have just enough time to explain this scene here, right? So in this scene, after the scene of the prison, it goes into the dream of the king. Now the dream of the king is saying here, the king is in a place where he's kind of like with his ministers, right? He's discussing the dream with his kind of right-hand man. And he says, وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ إِنِّي أَرَى سَبْعُ بَقَرَاتٍ سِمَانٍ يَأْكُلُهُنَّ سَبْعٌ إِجَافٍ. إِنِّي أَرَانِي can also kind of like suggest that when he says inni arani, indeed I see, can also mean that he's actually seeing this repetitively. Like he keeps seeing this dream over and over again. Right? Indeed I see it often. And is something that's actually concerning him. Like, what does this really mean? So with this urge of trying to understand what this means, he goes and seeks advice. And he goes to his advisors and he explained his dreams amongst his advisors, right? So imagine a room, a king's palace, and he has a specific room specifically for the higher people in society, right? So it's like lavish. You have seats that are made out of probably gold or something like that, right? And you have a big round circle where people come and gather and they discuss meetings. They discuss things about, you know, their country and what they're going to do and finances and this and that, right? So they're in this meeting, and he calls upon, he summons all of his advisors, and he says, listen, I have a dream. And this dream, indeed, I see in it, سَبْعُ بَقَرَاتٍ سِيمَانٍ, 7 fat cows. Siman or suman means fat, right? 7 fat cows. يَأْكُلُهُنَّ سَبْعٌ إِجَافٍ. He says, there are 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 skinny cows. So these 7 skinny cows are eating these fat cows, right? وَسَبْعُ سُنْبُلَاتٍ خُضْرٍ وَأُخْرَى يَابِسَاتٍ. He also sees like harvest or grains, like sumbulat or like grains, right? Like, you know how you see like a bunch of like farmland, and so like if it's like really like green, you know that is growing, like corn or whatever, right? Is healthy. If you look into a farmland and all you see is dry and stuff like that, like dry corn and dry leaves and stuff like, and just brown, you know that it's dead. There's nothing, right? It's wasted. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to go and try to fix it again, right? He sees in his dream 7 green grains, and then he sees 7 وَأُخْرَى يَابِسَاتٍ, and then he sees another 7 completely dried grains, right? And then he says, Ya Mali'u, uftuni. He says, oh people, like, oh my advisors, tell me the meaning of my dream. Like, I don't know what it means. And tell me if you can interpret it for me. Like, interpret this dream for me. They respond and they said, قَالُوا أَضْغَاثَ أَحْلَامٍ. He says, these visions that you're having, it doesn't make sense. It's confusing. Like, don't worry about it. Like, don't worry. It's just confusing images and visions that you're having. Meaning that it has no meaning to it. Don't worry too much about it. This is what his advisors are telling him, right? Now, in a meeting, especially like a meeting with high status people, you have servers who serve them, right? People who come around and serve tea, for example, or when it's lunchtime, they come and they have like a bunch of people who serves them meals, right? These high status people, they don't go out and just pour their own drinks. They don't do that. They pay other people to serve them. Now remember the person who was in jail, what was he? He's a wine bearer, right? What does wine bearer do? They serve the king. So imagine, in this this meeting room, the person who's serving wine to these people are who? The same guy. And he hears everything that they're saying, right? Once he hears the word dream, he remembers Yusuf alayhi salam after years and years of forgetting. Okay? Now I'm emphasizing years and years because Yusuf alayhi salam stayed in prison for a very long time. For a very long time. It wasn't just, a couple years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It was a long time. Now for somebody to have patience to stay in prison, or just to even be in prison for 1 week, is hard. It's even harder to stay in prison knowing that you're innocent, knowing that you're not even supposed to be there. But Yusuf alayhi salam, he was patient. Because he knew what? He knew Allah's name. What did we say? Wahidul Qahhar. Because he knew that. He knew that Allah was going to take care of him. And this is Allah's way of taking care of him. The dream of the Malik and the wine bearer being in that place at that time and the exact moment. This is Allah's way of taking care of His servant. Did Yusuf alayhi salam know that He's taking care of him? Does Yusuf alayhi salam knew about the dream of the king? Did Yusuf alayhi salam know that the wine bearer was hearing this whole thing? No. We have to trust Allah. When we know that Allah is taking care of us, we know that Allah is taking care of us with things that we don't know. Allah takes care of us with the things that we do know, right? Our clothes, our food, our parents, our car, our home, and everything else that we have. Our heart, our blood running, our eyes, our health. But what about the things that we don't know? That's happening outside and we don't know about it. Right? This is Allah. Wahidul Qahhar. The one that is supreme over everything else. This is how He takes care of His servant. So they tell him, Adghathu ahlam. These dreams are mere, it's meaningless. Don't worry about it. But the person, he goes to the king after, the wine bearer. He says, قال الذي ناج منهما وادكر بعد أمة أنا أنبئكم بتأويله فأرسلون. The person goes, the one that was saved. Remember the one that wasn't saved? He was put on a cross. The one that was saved, that was freed, remembered after what he said, and he goes to him, he says, I will inform you of the interpretation of this dream. I'll tell you the interpretation. Just send me, and I'll tell you. Meaning like, فَأَرْسِلُونَ, meaning like, go send me somewhere, and I'll come back and I'll tell you the meaning of this dream. Right? We'll stop there, inshallah. I know it's a bit of a cliffhanger, but some of the scholars mentioned that this person, the wine bearer, the fact that he says فَأَرْسِلُونَ, like send me and I'll come back and I'll tell you the dream. It is pretty obvious that the king, he knows his servants. He's been working with this person for a long time. He knows him and he knows his capabilities. In fact, the fact that the person had to ask, like, let me go first and I'll get the dream for, or I'll try to interpret the dream for you and come back, tells the king that he's not the one that's interpreted the dream. He's going to somebody to seek the interpretation and come back and tell him. Right? So he goes forth. The next following ayats tells us even more about Yusuf alayhi salam. In fact, I'll leave you with this. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, when he reaches one of the ayahs that we're going to mention next week, when he reaches this ayat, he's telling the people that that the Prophet ﷺ is in front of. He says, I am amazed by what Yusuf alayhi salam did. What did he do? We'll explain it in the next class, inshallah. Right? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, he says, Yusuf alayhi salam amazed me by what Yusuf alayhi salam did. Yeah? Inshallah. So the wine bearer goes and talks to Yusuf, and that's what we're going to talk about inshallah next week. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk wa jazakumullahu khairan for reading inshallah.